Uh-huh. Okay, don't worry. What's up, guys? Danny and Cthulhu here from the Lassercast, and we are back with Lovecraft Month on our channel, and I am covering episodes 5 and 6 of Lovecraft Country on HBO Max. Episodes 5 and 6 are two of, I think, the better episodes because they're so out there. Uh, they're so crazy. Now, one of the chief complaints I had about Lovecraft Country, and this was kind of both the book and the show, was that it felt almost like an anthology where each story in the book, each character got their own story. And they tried to weave this overarching story to kind of bring it all together. And I liked the individual stories, but the overarching story kind of fell apart for me. And I kind of felt the same way with the series, where I like that each episode kind of focuses on one character and shows us this particular character journey, but then they try to like tie it all back together, and there's scenes that kind of try to wrap everything back around. And I think that was where the show faltered a little bit. Still a really good show, and episodes 5 and 6 are both way out there, and they're both very good. Episode 5 was directed by Cheryl Dunye, and it's called Strange Case. And in this episode, Ruby, played by Wunmi Masaku, who I've already raved about with our review of His House. That was our #1 horror movie of 2020 on our countdown. That's on Netflix, by the way. She gets the episode here. And basically, she wakes up in William's house, and she is not Ruby. She is white. And she is now played by Jamie Newman. And we saw Jamie Newman earlier in episode 2. She was kind of the that weird dog handler who gets knocked out so that they can go downstairs into this basement and free Montrose when they were trying to rescue Montrose from the Brathwaite family. She's now the white version of Ruby. She takes the name Hillary, and she doesn't understand, for obvious reasons, why she woke up white. And it turns out that William has given her a vial of some kind of magic liquid, and this is her way to become white. But the transformation sequences here, this isn't like you take the serum, you go to sleep, and you wake up a different race. This is like full-on werewolf transformation shit. The special effects in this episode are off the hook. You're talking about Jamie Newman and Wunmi Masaku going from one race, one actress, and then ripping flesh and skin off, and the other woman, the other actress, emerging from it. Is American Werewolf in London type stuff. It is just an absolutely amazing transformation sequence, and it happens several times in the episode. It's really good, and it leads to this great story through the episode where Ruby, a black woman, gets to experience 1950s America as a white woman. And one of the first things that happens as she stumbles outside is she bumps into a black boy, and the cops pull up immediately, and she puts her hands up because she's a black woman. That's what she knows to do. The cops are here, better put your hands up. But she's not a black woman now. She's a white woman, and the cops are basically threatening to beat up this poor little black kid, and she has to say, nothing happened. You know, we bumped into each other. It's all good. He was trying to help me. The cops end up bringing her home to William, and without the serum, she's, transforming back into Ruby in this violent, flesh-ripping way. And there are some great lines here. She tells William, "It was the first time that I was out on the street and people were scared for me instead of being scared of me." And there's another line later on where whiteness is described as currency, that we just go out and we're able to use our whiteness as currency. And it's such a clever way of showing white privilege without saying the words white privilege. I think there's a stigma against, anybody who uses the term white privilege now is immediately deemed to be a woke liberal. But I teach history for a living. If you teach U.S. history and you don't mention race, you're not teaching American history. You're teaching your saturated version of it. And this show does such a great job of really hammering that home. And the two actresses in this episode just are mind-bogglingly good. Jamie Newman is a white actress who has to play a black actress playing a white actress. She's white, but she's really black, and she has to pretend that she's white to fit in. So it's this, she's acting as somebody else, acting as somebody else. It's fantastic. And Wunmi Mosaku she's equally great. She's got, and the two of them work together because they're basically coming in and out of each other in these transformation sequences. It's so good. This episode also features not just these elements of racism, but also sexism. You see the women at this department store where Hillary gets a job. They deal with an overly aggressive male boss. There's also scenes of LGBTQ relationships and rights, where Michael Kenneth Williams as Montrose, we find out that he is homosexual. He has his lover is in a drag show, and he gets violently beaten up by Atticus in this episode, and he goes to his lover. Basically, he just gives in and refuses to, be ashamed of his sexuality anymore. So this episode really doesn't just go into race, but it goes into so many aspects of people who are subordinate groups, African Americans, women, LGBTQ, and it gives them a voice in this episode. It's a fascinating episode, in part because of the special effects, but also in part because of the things it has to say about the special effects. And the revenge sequence at the very end that Ruby gets on her boss is jaw-dropping. It is fantastic, jaw-dropping stuff. And I think the episode has so much to say about how white people are fascinated by black culture and are looking to kind of co-opt other cultures and make them white. We see this where a group of the white women, they get the one black woman who works at the department store to take them to a black bar on the south side of Chicago, so that they can learn how to dance, black dances. And it's fascinating stuff, the way that is. And of course, the boss tries to force himself on his black female coworker, and when she refuses, he drops the N-bomb on her, and yeah, this episode has a lot to say about all of these issues. And then it ends with another crazy reveal where William, Ruby's man who has given her the serum, it turns out at the end he has his own transformation moment where it turns out that William is Christina. And while Ruby's been having sex with him, it's really been Christina the whole time. So there's so much going on in this episode. It's so much that is more than meets the eye. It's really a fascinating episode. We also see Atticus and Letty getting closer together. They have a very HBO style scene together. Sometimes with HBO, you don't even, it just gets too graphic. So that was episode 5. That was really Ruby's episode, and it's these two actresses playing off one another and doing a phenomenal job. And then we get to episode 6. And in case you forgot that the name of the show is Lovecraft Country, and you are thinking to yourself, man, I'm really missing my weird tentacled monsters. Well, get ready. Episode 6, which I think might be my favorite episode of the series, is called Meet Me in Daegu. Daegu, South Korea. This episode takes place 1949 to 1950, at the very beginning of the Korean War. And Meet Me in Daegu is a play on Meet Me in St. Louis, which we find out right at the beginning is Jamie Chung's favorite movie. She goes to watch the American movies that are playing in South Korea, and she knows Meet Me in St. Louis by Judy Garland's film. She knows her speaking roles. She knows her dance numbers. She loves it. We find out that there's this very strange relationship between her and her mother, and her mother is not invited into social circles and says that the only thing that will save our family is if you bring home a man. And your first thought is she wants her daughter to go out and probably marry a rich guy. And the whole first part of the episode is you're thinking that's what she wants her to go out and find a husband. Well, she comes home with a, well-dressed man. She takes off her clothes, she lights some candles, and there is a very graphic scene between the two of them. And then tentacles. Lovecraft tentacles. They're coming out of everywhere. They're coming out of all of the places tentacles can come out of. Below the waist, above the waist, the ears, the nose, the eyes, the mouth. There are tentacles everywhere. And what these tentacles do is they hook on to the other person into all of their places. And she's able to experience their entire lives. Every feeling they've ever had, every experience they've ever had. And the process inevitably just explodes the person, kills them, leaves them just an explosion of blood. And we find out that she has to do this a certain number of times. She has to collect souls because she's not human. She's this inhuman monster called a kumiho who has to take souls. And so the episode becomes that. We also see that she has this friendship with another nurse that she works with. But it's kind of hinted that this friendship is more than a friendship. There's a lot of subtle hand touching and long gazes, where you feel like there could be this blossoming romantic relationship between her and her friend, who's female. But before that can get explored, the Americans show up. And whereas episode 5 was about, whiteness and really focusing on race and how a black woman sees obvious racism and sexism towards her as a black woman, but she gets to view that through the white lens. Here, it is it's the experience of a group of people in their own country who are basically being colonized by the Americans, and it's basically kind of like an anti. It's a take on anti-colonialism, anti. It really shows how the Americans. Several times we hear, "Oh, we're here to save you from communism," but it's South Korea. It's their country, and suddenly the people are being persecuted by the Americans. There's this great scene late in the episode where Gia and Tick, Jonathan David, are arguing, and she's like, "How many people have you killed?" And he's like, "Well, I'm here to save you." And she's like, "Save us? You're killing my friends. You're killing our people." And you see the different views of American interventionism. That intervention, that's the word I was looking for. American intervention in these countries. We always look at it through the lens, the very propaganda-ish. We look through it through the lens of, well, America, we stand for democracy, we stand for freedom. So when we go into another country, we're doing it to save the people. Well, the people in that country, they don't always see it that way. They don't see it, they look at it very often as our country is being invaded and we're being told how to live. And if we don't live up to another country's standard, we're being punished. And you get that feeling a lot in this episode. And again, the history teacher in me really dug this episode, really enjoyed the perspectives here. So this friend who Gia could have potentially had a romantic relationship with, but it's a friend. It turns out she was a communist spy, and Atticus and his regiment end up murdering some of the nurses looking for the communist spy. And eventually she outs herself as a communist spy, and she gets dragged off. We never really see her again until later, and we find out that she was effectively tortured and killed. And Atticus ends up later on in the hospital, and Gia recognizes him, and her plan is, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to wait until he gets better, and then I'm going to seduce him, and I'm going to murder him with my tentacles and kill him. You collect his soul. And somehow, some way, they end up genuinely falling in love. And their relationship is great. And again, the two actors involved, Jamie Chung is so good in this episode. Such a brave performance. She really, she just gives everything to this performance. Her character's kind of been hinted at since the first episode, but this is her episode to shine. And Jonathan David is excellent. This is one of my favorite episodes with him as well. But yeah, this was a fantastic episode, and it ends with her, her and Tick are getting down to business, but they're doing it they're actually making love. They're not, she's not just using him to try to kill him, and the tentacles come out, or she calls them her tails, and she's able to control them, but she also, not only does she see his past, but she sees his future. and she sees him dying a terrible death. And so the episode ends with her going to this kind of witch doctor to kind of find out if there's anything she can do to prevent Tick's death. Episode 5 ended with her Tick contacting her on the phone. So will Gia come back towards the end? This was episode 6. There's 7, 8, 9, 4 more episodes to go. So we'll see where she shows up. But yeah, these 2 episodes back to back were really fantastic. They give you so much to think about. They give you so much visually to think about, between the epic werewolf-style transformations in episode 5 to the tentacle sex monsters in episode 6. There's tons of deep thinking to do in terms of racism, in terms of American colonialism. There's so much. That's one of the great things about this show, is it really does give you so much to think about. So that's going to be it for episodes 5 and 6 of Lovecraft Country. It's on HBO Max. You can go and watch it and tell me what you thought in the comments. Pete is going to be back with episodes 7 and 8, and then I think we're going to come together to knock out the last 2 episodes. This weekend, we are doing a book review for Lovecraft Month. We decided to read Ramsey Campbell's The Hungry Moon, and we're going to be talking about that book on sometime this weekend. So look for that coming up on the channel. And we'll have a few more 30-second reviews, a few more quick little Lovecraft movie reviews throughout the rest of March. April, we are going to be dedicating April to one of our favorite channels here on the Lassercast, and that is Shudder. In April, Shudder is bringing us Creepshow Season 2. Joe Bob's Last Drive-In is coming back for a brand new season. Tons of new stuff is coming out, and we're going to really focus heavily on Shudder material in the month of April. So look forward to that coming up. We're also going to be reviewing the new series Them, which is going to start streaming on Amazon Prime in, I believe it's April 9th. So check that out. And this has been Danny from the Lassercast, and I'll see you soon.